I love this quote here. Nobody has the power to change the way people see the world more than marketers do. That's a line that really spoke to me, JK, from Lola Bakare's new book, Responsible Marketing.
It's a great line. Succeeding in a social mission alone, it really doesn't make successful inclusive marketing, make it a successful inclusive marketing initiative. As a marketer, you have to be have some fiscal responsibility to your brand, not just and the bottom line. So that's where responsible marketing approach comes in. The kind of the confluence of all these things.
I'm super, super excited to have this opportunity to engage with the three of us on something. I get the sense that we all care about, and that can really make us have a more successful fiscally 2025. Yeah. And so that's where I want to start. There's never been a need for a binary between inclusive marketing, fill in the blank, cause marketing, conscious marketing. All of those things have the word marketing in them. And for them to be true, they have to create outsized commercial value for them to be successful. Now, DEI as a principle, as a sociological group of concepts, which is another funny thing because you can't really cancel sociology, just like you can't really cancel DEI, like right. Diversity, equity, and inclusion. These words are not leaving the dictionary. These are words in the English language that preceded the American experiment, of which I am a proud citizen and a daughter of immigrants in a world where um, you know, maybe if I had been born 50 years later, I wouldn't be here. So when we start to think back to what we care about as business people, as people who are focused on logic, as people who are focused on growth, there's nothing, and I think Corey from Elf, CMO, said it so beautifully yesterday on LinkedIn, as did her CEO. It really doesn't make any sense. And it's actually financially irresponsible to not consider the widest swath of your consumers who might be interested in engaging in your product if you're looking to be a long-term legacy, decades long, hundreds of years long company like the likes of Unilever and Procter and Gamble, which, and we talk about this in almost every talk I give, we need to remind people we're founded on a platform of purpose. They wanted to commercialize soap so that people wouldn't die of tuberculosis in the streets unnecessarily during the Industrial Revolution on both sides of the pond. And so how did they teach people to use that soap? Well, content marketing.
Yep.
Storytelling in the ads. Right. So none of this is new. But what I will say is that the thinking class is going to dramatically expand in the next 4 years, because if there's one thing that we didn't embark on this American experiment for, it was to be stamped back down. Too many people have risked their lives.
Mm-hmm.
And so as marketers who aren't performing brain surgery, who aren't on the front lines, whose jobs are, for all intents and purposes, pretty fun.
Mm-hmm.
Are we really going to feel burdened by the power we have to shape a cultural narrative that accepts more people than it excludes?
Mm-hmm.
Whether or not you believe in whatever happens when we're gone from here, I want to leave here knowing that my conscience is clear of doing everything I could in my sphere of influence to be on the right side of the line and make more money for the companies that I steward.
So how can marketers, like you said, you want to be on the right side, you want to push, what can they do? Like push back against some of these, like maybe they're starting to talk about it in their company. Like how do we push back against that, push back against the C-suite who might be like,
yeah. I mean, I think everybody needs to, and this is something you'll be surprised hearing from me, stay in their lane. At a book launch event I had last week in New York, a young man who really reminded me of myself and happened to be a young white man raised his hand, and you could tell he's probably his early to mid 20s, had so many ideas, so frustrated by the way things were kind of going on in the company that he was in. And like, when do I get to have my say? When do I get to go in there and tell them, you guys, this is so wrong? And what I told him, which I also might surprise you, is, well, you don't do it that way.
Mm-hmm.
You get in conversations, you get in the room, you ask questions, you get people to talk about themselves, you learn what their interests are. Everybody has something that they care deeply about. And I go so far as to say love. And if those of us who are allies and activists in this space, and when I say activists, I mean the type of activists that want us to use capitalism in a way that it benefits all of our stakeholders, just like John Mackey wrote in Conscious Capitalism, and that was the book that really changed the way I think about all of this stuff. That's another thing. Yvon Chouinard will never, if you read his book, he'll never refer to Patagonia as sustainable. I found that fascinating.
Mm-hmm.
He's simply saying, with what I have right now, with the conditions that we're in right now, all I can do is try to be as responsible as possible.
Mm-hmm.
So I use this word to really try to take the pressure off marketers. You're not going to build Rome in a day. You're not going to do a really cool program that ended up getting, 5 Black-owned businesses on the shelf of Sephora, and then they became the quickest turning SKUs. So like, you control what you can control, you stay in your lane. And so I told him, start getting to know people. Ask them questions, get them to see you as an inquisitive young man, and then I guarantee you, before long, you will be invited to the table and asked for your opinion. We no longer live in a world where there have to be any true silos, and that's a blessing for those of us who want to create more light, who want to, the three of us, it looks like we're opening our eyes. But as marketers, going back to your very first question, nobody has more power to show people what's really going on. And this is encouraging us to keep these conversations going, to ignore those who tell us that they are frivolous, because we have way too much historical context, even within, some of ours and our parents' lifetimes, to show us that we cannot afford to turn a blind eye right now. And so for marketers, you've got 20, 30, 40, 50,000, depending on the size of your company, million, deciding on the size of your company, of marketing budget to allocate. My book is meant to challenge them with the question of, what win-wins are you going to find where you're not only creating financial value for your business, but you're actually doubling down on that because you did the ultimate thing that every marketer knows is the cheat code to outside success, to quote my friend Marcus Collins, and that is emotional connection.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. Well, you bring up a really good point that I wanted to ask about, because you talk in your book about like perceived risk versus status quo. So, there's a lot of folks in that are dealing with marketing budgets and marketers that are just like, well, we don't want to push it too far because of the political climate, perhaps. Maybe they're just staying status quo. We're not gonna. But then there's other companies. I mean, look what Ben and Jerry's is doing right now. With their TikTok strategy and everything like that. They're coming out full bore like, hey, we know what's going on, that there's a very charged climate, and we want to make sure people know where we stand.
Exactly. I mean, when I first started doing this work and this research, one of the lines, and I can be kind of a cornball, but one of the lines that came to me, and has never left my website, is fortune favors the bold. We are in a very lucky situation where a lot of what we get to do is about thinking. That's why an English major is good preparation. Analyzing, making arguments. And so being always convinced that you're right puts you in a place where you can't do that job very well.
Correct.
And so that's what we're starting to see right now. It's like, if you can be okay And I'm sorry, but because I loved, look, if you looked around my space right now, like if I had to just give a guess, it's probably like 75% Target. So this is a brand I love, and when you love a brand, they can really disappoint you. Because I know
Mhm.
for a fact, insider information and just observation, there is no way their diversity vendor efforts have not enriched them over the years.
Mhm.
This person comes in on day one, which is the number one thing no good leader does, and says, "You're all out. I don't care what you've been doing. I'm
Mhm.
not looking at a report. I don't want to know anything about efficacy. I don't want to see your face. You're out."
Mhm.
It's not logical.
Mhm.
It's
No.
just not. Listen, if he said that after 3 months of studying, I might even say, all right, so what do we need to do to fix
Mhm. Mhm.
Yeah.
our diversity and equity? But to abolish, you're coming from a nefarious
Mhm.
place. And let's go back to this topic, content marketing. It is all about the proof in the pudding, and you can't find that unless you're willing to test, learn, and adjust before you throw babies out with bathwater.
And you talked about this, like the supplier, the importance of the supplier diversity. But the same thing goes for, how do we maintain our critical diversity of thought and our content operations and our customer conversations? Like, how do we, you know, create a team that's focused on that? And you kind of talk about this in the book about educating everyone as well.
Yeah. I mean, I think the answer is we do. It's
Mm-hmm.
funny because you bring up just the other day, I was celebrating Elf Beauty for all of the amazing work they've been doing, for putting their foot down and saying, look, we can't divest from diversity because that would mean we'd be divesting from our business.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that's a paraphrase, but they're like, what do you even mean? Like, our
Right.
entire thing is about bringing communities together to use our products. So, like, yeah, exclusion doesn't really fit into that mix. But when it comes to what a brand needs in order to be most successful, who needs to be in the room, that's where we have to get starting a lot more intentional about, yes. And I go back to what a lot of folks are moving away from, setting the quotas,
Mm-hmm.
because quotas are goals.
Mm-hmm.
Goal has always been a good thing. Quota became a bad thing, right? It became a punitive thing. No, it's a goal. So you have a number in mind of what you would like to achieve. So you're not always just saying, uh, that guy's more of a, that gal's more of a, that person, they being gender inclusive, are more of a fit for us.
Mm-hmm.
Without quotas, we aren't able to get ourselves past the idea that comfort is not the goal, success is.
Right.
And that might take going through the discomfort of getting somebody who may not fit for whatever reason to fit. That's the goal of the leadership.
Mm-hmm.
You don't just get to find people who fit, and you're sitting back there, drinking your Celsius or whatever and having a good time.
Yeah.
Like, the goal of management is to create harmony. And I
Mm-hmm.
think we've lost the plot on that.
This is a perfect segue into this question I had for you. Um, if a brand or someone doesn't currently have a responsible marketing mission,
Sure.
what are some key questions that you think that they should ask themselves, or things to consider before they start, formulating a mission statement?
What I think we would all say, and what I have said, is that it's not about exactly what questions that you ask, but it's about finding out what your historical debts are. What do you owe? What can you fix based on the specific, right, like, value proposition of your brand? For example, Aunt Jemima, years later, and it's never too late, they decided to change the name of that company to really honor the person that was behind it, right?
Mm-hmm.
And not just caricature her as an ant without a real name, that's almost like a joking figure. that sort of a rebranding is paying your historical debt.
Mm,
And I mean, just think about the way things are in life in general. Like, again, marketing's not that different than life in general. When you pay a debt, you feel good, the person you
mhm,
paid it to feels good, even if it doesn't matter to them. But the emotional repayment of debt, how is that not going to ingratiate you to people who are at the shelf? And that's one
mhm,
of the studies I did in my book, which with in partnership with Sparks and Honey, and a lot of the great researchers there. We really asked ourselves, and if anyone grabs the book, you can see this in the back, like all the results are there. If people don't actually need, or it's not personally relevant to them, the the solving of historical debt, or the sort of creation of a more inclusive product. We use the example of a lipstick cap
mm.
that
Yeah.
is easier for people with mobility issues to open. Even people without mobility issues are going to be attracted to want that. This is
Mhm,
my rare beauty blush. I
mhm,
love that Selena was doing that. I happen
mhm,
to have a sister with special needs who has mobility issues, but that really
mhm,
wasn't why. It was more just like, I am so glad that we live in a world where we're invested in finding solutions for everybody.
mhm.
I
Well, I
need a
have one
kid.
more question for you, Lola. Um, what if we go out and we have a responsible marketing initiative and we get it wrong, even if we have
Mm,
our best intentions? What do you tell people then? Just give it up?
yes. Here, listen. And I want to shout out Robert Livingston, who's a great LinkedIn creator, affiliated with Harvard, I believe. I'm not sure if he's a professor, but I'm going to go with Harvard professor. Correct me if I'm wrong later. He wrote on LinkedIn this really great, and I quoted it in the book and source him. Um, Sort of framework of thinking through how to properly apologize. And I'd also been thinking around these ideas myself for a long time. So I would encourage everybody to go check out Robert's work along these lines specifically. But in my paraphrase, number one thing you never do is don't let that word intent cross your lips. I know it's hard because
Mm,
we have been so ingrained into this idea that, well, I didn't mean it. Like, if you ever
mhm,
watch reality TV, like this is like I do, this is very hard because it's always the first thing. Well, that wasn't my intention. Nobody asked you about your intention. I just told you the impact what you did had on me.
mm.
So
Right.
Yep.
the apology is about, I am so sorry that what I said had such a negative impact on you. I would love to spend more time listening so that I fully understand where you're coming from. And again, I have lawyers in my family. So nowhere in what I just said did I say I'm taking responsibility for it.
Mm,
But anybody can be sorry that the words that they used had a negative effect on somebody else. That is not, in fact, admitting guilt. Sometimes and very often it should be, but that's opinion stuff. We don't have to go there. But it costs nobody anything to say, I'm sorry about the effect what
mm,
we did as a brand had on you as consumers. We value you. We're listening to you. We are so grateful. It's like,
mm,
I am so sorry that when you saw this image, it took you there.
mhm,
Mhm.
And we are lucky to have your insights. We pay
mhm.
for focus groups.
Yeah.
That's another thing I try to tell marketers. Why are you so upset at getting critique? You used to
Mm.
pay a lot of money to sit in a glass box and let people tear you to shreds. What's
That's
different about this?
right.
It's
Yeah.
free.
Yeah.
So
That's right.
I,
humility,
I,
Always,
humility, humility,
yeah.
humility,
yeah.
humility.
Lola,
Humility is the way. And
Lo-
and you see the top CEOs, even I'll give him props again. The CEO of Elf Beauty, when I did my yes and obviously this man is brilliant. I'm probably not telling him he didn't anything he didn't already know. But it was just such an enthusiastic, yeah, Lola, you're right. Thank you. Those are the people who lead in society.
Mm.
They are not concerned about this. They're concerned about that. And for anybody who wants to know what a heart gesture looks like, it's like that.
Hmm.
I'll leave it at that.
And those are the people and the brands that you want to follow.
Right.
I mean, that's what.
Absolutely. And I mean, here's my thing. I feel very comfortable in any room you'll put me in. I have friends, up, down, all around, different sides of the aisle. Now, where I draw the line is if you express that you don't believe anybody has a right to exist on this planet Earth or in these United States of America because you don't respect the way that they have been born,
Mm.
those are people I won't sit with.
Mm-hmm.
But anybody who wants to have a conversation about where we've gotten, whether it's on Fox News or NPR, like I want to be a person who can sort of help steward us towards a better level of togetherness. Because, oh, and I used to hate when I would hear people say this, but I'm going to say it now. Turning 40 makes you so sappy. We really aren't as different as we would like to think we
Mm-hmm.
are.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
We've
Yep.
Yeah.
just been beaten down.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So let's
Yeah.
let's stand up.
Mm-hmm.
Especially those of us who have these really fun jobs where we have so much control. To go to back to the beginning of your conversation over what people see, consume, hear. So if we're going to shape culture, let's shape it in a way that includes all of us.
Mm-hmm. I love it. That's a great way to end. We appreciate it. Thank you, Lola.
See you later.
All
Take care,
right, take
Lola.
care, everybody.